Hi everybody, this will be part 27 in the character rigging tutorial series. Last video we talked about how to set up the arm controls, and videos before that we set up the torso and leg controls. So now we're going to come back and talk about some smaller controls that could be created for specific areas to add more believability, but also to give you control over things like the eyes, the jaws, and in later videos we'll come back and do fingers and helper joints and twist joints. So this video we'll talk about how to create controls for the eyes and the jaw. And these same type of controls can be applied to other facial joints that you may have, such as like the lips, if you have a tongue, if you have eyebrows that you want to animate, eyelids, even if you wanted to do like stylistic motion like nose, eye or ears, and the teeth could wiggle or whatnot as well. But right now I just have joints for the jaw to rotate, and then also for the eye to rotate as well. So we're going to create some basic controls for those major key elements. Alright, we're going to use curve controls, and we're going to use constraints here as well. We're not going to use inverse kinematics. This is going to be constraints also. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to create a circle again, and I'm going to highly modify the circle this time. So that way it looks like kind of like a jaw guard for a football helmet almost. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to come in here and let's turn off our geometry for a second. And I just have layers in here for each major part, my joints, my geometry. I can create one for my controls later as well. I'm going to take this, turn off my geometry, take this curved circle, hold on the V key and snap this to my jaw joint. And let me turn my geometry back on. I want to rotate this down so it follows in line. Let's go to side view. Follows in line to the same length as my jaw. Pretty close. See if I can get a little closer here. Move my mouse a little bit. There we go. That's pretty close. All right. I can also lock my geometry layer, so if we put it to a reference layer, that means I can't select my geometry. Now what I want to do is modify this curve. Let's turn off my joints. I want to modify this curve by going into control vertex, turn the wireframe for a second, and I want to take the top three vertices and kind of move them down, kind of invert them. So I have this kind of football guard kind of thing, something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect by any means. Maybe I'll take the outer points here, move them back, scale them in. There you go. And kind of make sure this is up there where the base of the jaw would be. There you go. Maybe I'll take, well, that's the outside. Take the other inside ones and scale them in a little bit. There you go. So what I'm looking for is, I don't know, just a more refined shape. Maybe I'll scale this all in a little more. This end one doesn't need to be that kind of far away. But a shape that can be different so that I can know that this is going to be my jaw control. Okay, so it's angled properly with the jaw, rotate angle set properly. And this is going to be an orient constraint. So we need to go name this. Let's say control underscore jaw. All right. And what we're going to do is delete the history. So edit, delete by type history. We can't freeze the transforms because we want that rotate angle to be there. So we need to run that offset controller script from the previous videos. I think it's not going to let me, so I need to close my tab out again. Delete tab. We'll go File, Open, Script. Go find my offset controller again. Just a reminder, this offset controller script does the freeze transforms for the curve, but creates a dummy group that can then be used in the hierarchy properly. So in order to keep that rotate angle, we have to use this offset controller script. So I'm going to select the control, shift select the jaw joint, and run that offset controller script. Okay, that's set properly. And then I'm going to shift select the jaw joint and go to constrain, orient, let's go to the box beside it, and make sure maintain offset is turned on. Okay, let's do add. There you go. So now if I rotate my curve control, that should rotate the jaw. Working properly. This also gives me option for like chewing as well, so I can have some facial expression here. Or rotate, something like that as well. But this is not going to be a movement control. This is just going to be a rotate control because naturally a human's jaw rotates with a little bit of traversal action, but we can do that a little bit with like side to side rotate as well. But this is primarily going to be a rotate control. All right, I need to open up my hierarchies here because my jaw needs to always follow what my top neck control does. So with my jaw group that it created with the offset controller, jaw group, I'm going to go find neck 3 control. Hold down the control key and click on the neck 3 control, hit P for parent. So that parents the group for the jaw underneath the neck curve. Okay. So if I rotate my neck, the jaw will rotate as well, but my jaw can also rotate independently. All right, so that's an orient forward kinematic control for the jaw, just like we did with the spine, neck, and arms. All right. Next we're going to create is eye controls. So we're going to do simple eye circle curves. We'll scale it up here so we can see it. We'll rotate it 90 degrees. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can set the eye controls directly on the eye joints, but that's really inside of the eye, which could be difficult to see. So instead what I'm going to do is from a front view, I'm going to make sure we're going to do 2 sets of controls. So make sure this is really kind of aligned in the middle. I'm going to have one larger control. So let me duplicate this, scale it out some. And this is going to be my 2-eye control. So both eyes at the same time. And then I'm going to have a smaller eye control. That's going to be for each individual eye. So let's see, go away. All right, so this is going to be my dual eye control, and then I'm going to have let's go ahead and duplicate this so that I have an individual eye control for each eye. All right, so let's turn our joints and our geometry back on. What I need to do, let's actually turn our geometry off, is make sure that this eye control in the Y and the X axis is snapped to the center of my eye root joint, which is, I know is the orange one there. Yep, so left eye. All right, so this one over here, I'm going to hold down the V key and snap that to the center of the right eye joint. I'm not using the center box. Actually, let's undo that. I'm going to use the arrow, so that way I know I'm not moving it back towards the center of the eye. I'm just using the 2 arrows of the Y and the X axis, so that way it's still in the same Z axis position. Translate. But that way I know the eye controls are right in front of the eye joints. Okay. Now what this may do is actually, because my eyes are kind of tilted outward a little bit, so we kind of rotate it outward, it may pop the eyes back in. So what I might want to do is instead, turn off my geometry again, go back to the front view, is actually just snap this to the eye end joint. There you go. Instead of the eye base joint. So that way that shouldn't pop the eyes around at all when I set this constraint up. All right, typically you could leave it like this, but I like to make it look more human. So let's do control vertex and control vertex on that. I can select the top and bottom vertices, and let's kind of scale them in some. Looks almost like an oval, almost like just the outer 4 points. I can scale them in again. I can make it look like an eye, I guess, something like that. Scale them out a little more so we have that almond-like shape. So you can make this look however much like an eye that you want. And usually I do some kind of goggle shape for the dual eye control, so it's not a simple circle. So I'll do something like that for the combined eye control. So let's go ahead and name these. So this is my control right eye. This is my dual control, dual eye, control left eye. All right, so we're ready to go. All right, let's take these controls. We're going to select them. Since this is not going to be an orient constraint, we don't need the offset controller script. So let's do edit, delete by type history, and then modify freeze transformations. Okay. This is going to be an aim constraint, which just means the eyes will always look in the direction of these controls. So we can do delete the history and freeze transformations as a basic standpoint here. All right, there's our eye individual controls, and we're going to have those two parented up to our dual eye control here in a little bit. All right, we're going to select the left eye control. Turn off our geometry for a second. And then I'm going to shift select the eye base, not the eye end, the eye base. Control, shift select the eye base. We're going to do constrain, aim. We're going to go to the box beside it and choose maintain offset. That'll keep it so the eyes won't pop at all as well. So this is an aim constraint. Select the control, shift select the eye base joint and do add. Okay, let's turn our geometry back on. Let's turn our joints off and you should be able to see this. With this curve control selected, if I move that, the eye will now rotate. It looks really weird only having one eye set up though. But you can do kind of some funny things with the eye this way. Undo that back to 0. But that works properly now. So let's select the right eye. Control, shift select the right eye base joint. Then we're going to go to constrain, aim, maintain offsets turned on, so I know they're good there. And we'll turn off our joints and back our geometry. And select that, and the right eye does work properly. There you go. Put it back to 0. So then what we want to do is be able to have the opportunity to rotate individual eyes if we want to, but be able to select one control and rotate both eyes like this, so we have a more natural eye motion. So these are aim constraints. If you have those joints selected, you can see the rotates are just affected, so it's not the translate, it's just a rotate. The last thing we're going to do here for the eyes is select those two left and right individual eye controls, and then finally shift select the dual eye control and hit P for parent. So with that hierarchy selected, we can still animate individual eyes. Turn off my joints for a second. So individual eyes can still be animated, but I can select my dual eye control and rotate both eyes. So that's an optimized way of doing eye controls there. All right, so we have a jaw control that works properly. We have individual eye controls. Oops. Okay, very good. And we have a dual eye control. All right, so that's the basis for setting up joints for the face. All right, that'll wrap up this video. Next video, we'll come back and talk about how to do helper joints and twist helper joints. And then we'll come back and do finger joints as well.